Hi, I'm Dr. Charlene Walters, author, business and branding mentor, trainer, as well as your host for Launch, a business talk show for anyone who wants to launch their business, their career, or their life. Hi everyone, welcome to Launch. I'm your host, Charlene Walters, and today we have a wonderful guest, Rhonda Petit. She is a CEO and she is a sales and business peak performance coach. I'm super happy that she's here with us. Welcome, Rhonda.
So excited to be here with you, Charlene. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself? You have such a wonderful and exciting, interesting background.
Sure. I grew up in the hills of outside of Pittsburgh in the country, and I went to school. I was always naturally good at chemistry and math, so I became a chemist. Got a chemistry and business administration degree at school, but was always had this yearn for the free enterprise capitalism's getting into the business side of things. And so when I was working part-time in a lab, and my manager knew my business interest, and she said, "Hey, there's a sales rep position open. My JT Baker chemical person, got promoted, and there's an open territory. Why don't you go interview for that job?" And I took her advice and acted on it. And that's how I got into the business to business field on the chemistry side of things. And then that progressed into the DNA, genetics, proteomics, and into diagnostics selling. And I've been selling since I was 21 years old in B2B for over 38 years now. And I absolutely love it.
That is so amazing. I have a background in sales too. And when I graduated from college, that was the first thing I did for my first few jobs. And I loved it. And I tell everybody, if you can sell, that'll carry over into any different position you have. It really helps you as an entrepreneur, as an intrapreneur within a corporation. So it's a great skill, and I'm so glad that you've excelled at it and you've stuck with it. You also have a book out about selling. Can you tell us more about that book and what the audience can learn from reading it?
Sure, I'd be happy to. In 2019, I went through a job change, if you will. I was working for an organization, and it was right before COVID in 2019, and had known that I was gonna, when I got done working in corporate, that I wanted to run my own business. And so I had gone to coaching school, and one thing led to the other, and the job ended. They made some decisions of what they were going to do. And I remember looking up at the sky and saying, "Okay, God, you want me to do this now?" Meaning my coaching business.
Right.
And through study, I ended up at a Bob Proctor Matrix event, which is a place to go for new businesses and entrepreneurs to really network and make connections and things. And he starts talking about these universal laws. And I'm like, what's he talking about? Now, I'm a chemist. So a lot of these are like basic things from Newton's law and whatever, science and religion kind of mixing. But he really, kept talking about them. And I said, I really want to understand them. Well, when I started understanding the principles of universal law, I started to realize, oh, that's why sometimes I won big.
Right.
But when I failed, right, I didn't go to that or know to go to that right away to figure out how I could course correct quickly. And so I said to myself, well, I have to get this out because if I would have been 21 and someone handed me this book and told me, look, you can have so much success by following the universal laws in your sales career, I could have done even more than I did. And I was wildly successful, and still I am. I love selling. I wouldn't trade my career for anything in the world. But boy, when you can lean into principle and have a method of self-correction that can get you right back on track, it's a wonderful thing. So I just wanted to share it, and that's why I wrote it. And my hope is that the future generation of salespeople will be well known for serving, leading, and creating solutions and being people's guides to help them in their transformation.
That is amazing. And kudos to you for putting that out there, because you're right. That is a skill that many struggle with. Why do you think that is? Like new business owners, why do you think they have so much of a problem getting in there and selling?
Well, I write the first two chapters in my book. I talk about two things that hold most people back from selling and they're both misconceptions. They either have misconceptions about selling and what it is and what it's not, and then they have misconceptions perhaps about money and self-worth and different things like that. So, you know, I always like to start there. If you're in sales, I ask people, well, what is your perception of sales? And, if you look, if, those Venn diagrams
Yes.
between a con artist and a true professional salesperson, they're both really good persuaders.
Right.
The difference is, where's the focus? The pro is focused on the customer, where the con artist is focused on what they're going to get from the customer. And so one's on give and one's on get, and universal law is on the giving side.
That's a good point, because it is so true. You have to have the customer's best interests at heart to continue that relationship, to build that rapport. And people can spot it right away when you have your own best interests at heart instead. So I love that you talk about that in your book. And you also talk about the fact that it's 95% mindset. Why do you think that is? Or can you expound more upon that?
Sure. We're all vibrating, whether you know it or not. Your radio station's always on. We come out and we emit an attitude toward everything in life,
Yes.
which is a summation of our thoughts, our feelings, and our actions, right? And by the law of vibration, people are picking up what you're putting out, even if you're not saying it. So if you've ever been in a situation where you've gotten that intuition that something's just not right, you don't know what it is.
Right.
That's what customers pick up. And when I train salespeople, I always say, you don't want them to pick up your commission breath. And right? Because
that's a good way to put it.
They're going to pick, if you're thinking about how you're going to make the sale and what you're going to do with the money and all that other stuff, or you've got, people say you have to make a sale. That's another misconception. You never make a sale, you earn a sale.
Right.
But when you're focused on you and not fully on the client, they're going to pick that up. So I say selling is service, and if you come and think about it, a commission is nothing more than the earnings that you get for service rendered. So if you're always in a giving mode and you're always rendering service and you're always leaving people with an impression of increase, smiling, enthusiasm, really listening, deep, active listening with clients to really understand where are they and where are they trying to go, and find ways to help them, you can't lose. But you have to stay in that mindset. And that's why I say 95% mindset, 5% mechanics.
I believe you're right, because it really is a long game often, and sometimes you have to do some stuff and you won't get anything back for it, and that's okay. It'll come back to you, as you're saying. And I think people do really pick up on that energy. You also talk a lot about the fact that introverts can actually be good salespeople. Can you explain that a bit more? Because I work with some clients who are introverts and they do have a strong aversion to selling. Tell me what you think about that.
Yeah, I think they're the biggest benefit one has when they're an introvert is they're very curious, and they're the most, they're incredible listeners.
Yes.
And because they have that listening and that empathy, and their observations are very acute, they will tend to pick up more, just, I don't know, maybe it's like a dog hearing those noises that the dog was, I don't know, they just pick it up. Like they're just clairvoyant. And because they're quiet and using the two ears more than worrying about talking or what to say or whatever, they really get a good understanding. So if some of the people that I've hired over the years that came out of the labs or different things that were really nervous about selling. And then once they figured out that it was service-based, they just knocked it out of the park.
Right.
And I think it's, I would say it's the fact that, they're really good at listening, and listening, active listening is the most important thing. You have a skill you want to develop when you're selling.
Yes, you definitely do. You have to listen to what the customer is saying, and otherwise you're bound to make them unhappy somewhere along the process. And I remember when I was selling early on, I had to go and visit our customers across the country. And I remember going to my first one and being so nervous, right? And I didn't want to go in, I didn't know what to say. But now I think of myself as someone who could walk into any business and talk all the time. And some of it's practice too, getting that practice and just understanding the process, as you're saying. You also talk about in your book applying the metaphysical laws of the universe to success in sales. How can someone do that?
Well, there are multiple laws. There's the law of perpetual transmutation, which is when you use your will and you stay focused on your goal, your objective. And when you're selling, you want to be thinking about your goal all the time, and how you're going to, what you want and how you're going to get it, right? So how you're going to earn it. And so that willpower, the power of perpetual transmutation states that when you hold something, a picture, with your will over a prolonged period of time, and it becomes more and more visible, it's going to come into form. It has to, because through your repetition and your imagination, that's how all things come into physical form. There's the law of vibration. We talked a little bit about that earlier, where people are picking up your vibration. We all speak, human beings, dogs, animal, we all speak the law of vibration.
Yes.
And so if you're using that in a selling situation, it's very powerful. So if you really hone in on your intuition skills, and you can go in and read a room and you can tell who the decision makers are and stuff. I mean, it's very powerful. There's the law of polarities, and that goes to your attitude. So do you typically, when you assume things, do you assume the positive or you assume the negative? They're both there. It's
Right.
a choice of where you put your focus on. There's a law in selling, there's a law of gestation, just like a seed. We planted seeds maybe in May or whatever, and we're not going up there and digging them out and checking to see if they're growing. We've got to, let them grow. In your sales processes and your sales cycle times have gestation periods. You've got the law of relativity. So, a lot of times we get into a comparison game, and you really, everything just is until you relate it to something. So what are you choosing to relate things to? Those are just a couple of examples.
Those are great examples. Can you talk a little bit more about if someone is overly focused on the negative? And I know you work with a lot of people. How do you get them to move over into that positive space?
You have to question them. Is this helping you get what you want?
Right.
And you really have to get them to, sometimes, it could be a lot of things, but you have to get them to realize that we become what we think about.
Right.
And if all the focus in one of my book chapters is called Where Your Attention Goes, the Energy Flows.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you can either be talking about at the water cooler why you can't do the number, you can't, or you can be brainstorming and thinking of ideas using your imagination on how you can. It's a choice.
Right. Sorry, go ahead. An important.
And I think when you have when you're questioning someone, you've got to say, how empowering is that thought for you? How does it make you feel?
Yes.
What would make you feel different? What would it take for you to to allow yourself to believe in something different than what you're believing in right now? Because disbelief is the thing that holds us back, because any limitation that we invent for ourselves, we own.
Yes. And that's not good in business or sales, for sure.
Right.
Absolutely not. Can you also give us an example? I thought it was really interesting when you were talking about visualizing an outcome until it becomes a reality. Can you think of a big one that happened for you?
I think there's been many times, visualization is like when you're selling, it's a two-way street, right?
Yes.
And so what I always like to do is focus on what is it that you really, really want? If if we had a magic wand here and you're obviously in a current state, you want to accomplish, fix, or avoid whatever it is that we're talking about, because it's usually one of the three. They want to accomplish something, fix, or avoid. What would the
Right.
new world look like? And so you get them to start describing the new world, and then you start picturing with them, right? And
Okay.
tell me more, and who else would be involved, and any other benefits that that would have, and how would that make that person feel, and how would you feel, and what would that do for your business? And you start getting into that imagination. So what the other person's doing is they have a picture in their mind, and they're sharing the picture with you. And as you get more information about the picture, you're getting the picture in the mind. Well, what's happening? You're doing a mastermind, right?
Right.
And then your imagination kicks in. It's just like when you read a book and then you go to a movie theater. Sometimes you're disappointed in the movie theater. Well, that's because your imagination is amazing, right? I mean,
Right.
you'll put all kinds of things into the story, but when you start doing that and getting ideas and share it, with that work, and you're collaborating now with them on bringing that vision into reality, and that's fun.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I love that. I love that you're doing that work and that you're helping others to see what they can achieve through your work. We talked a little too about before about introverts and sales, but what are some other common sales misconceptions?
The sales misconception, with a con artist is one.
Right.
There's also misconceptions about earning sales versus making sales.
Yes.
Like make is a lot of times people associate that with force or coercion, but earning by rendering service is just totally changes your mindset, because you pay it forward, just like if you want fire in your fireplace, you've got to go put the logs on. I
Right.
think a lot of people in the work field, have misconceptions that I'm only going to do what I'm being paid for doing. And as in Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich, he says, if you only do what you're being paid to do, that's all you're ever going to earn, right?
Yes, true. So true.
So I think when people have those shifts about, a lot of the misconceptions happen from what you observed as a child. Because think of it, all of our beliefs are nothing more than an evaluation of something at the time that we believed is true,
Right.
because it was true for you at that particular time. The problem is most of us don't sit down on a yearly basis and say, are these beliefs serving me anymore? Which would be a great thing if everybody did, right?
Yes,
Because you'd
absolutely.
update those evaluations.
Right.
So some people, maybe somebody had a sales, maybe their dad or mom was in sales and they were away all the time and they didn't like that.
Mm.
Maybe, I write in my book about, going into the store and saying, somebody saying, don't talk to that salesperson, like as if they were, something was wrong with them. or don't pick up the
Avoid
phone, or
them.
don't go
Yes.
answer the door, like it was a danger talking to a salesperson, right?
Yeah, that's true. I never thought about it that way, but you're right. You're right.
And so, I that's why doing an evaluation, and I'll tell you the other thing, when you're selling, you want to really love and understand what you're selling, because when you totally understand what you're selling. That's a misconception. Sometimes people think they're selling the features of a product.
Right.
What you're selling is the emotion somebody's going to have once they have that solution in their hands and they get to use it. That's what you're selling. So you always want to sell the benefits, not the features. But sometimes you can go into a small company, or you might get wrapped up. I mean, your baby, you're bringing your baby to market and it's your baby. Right?
Yes.
and you get so focused on the widgets of how cool the device is or how cool the whatever the service, that you might have forgot about, well, what's the benefit for them, and that's what sells.
I think you're so right about that. I talk to entrepreneurs all the time and I try to always tell them to frame it as you're helping people. You have this wonderful solution, this product that's going to really just change their life. And I agree, because otherwise you'll get hung up on the little things and you really have to tug at their heartstrings. Something else that I think is really important in the sales process is building trust. Do you have any tips about building trust with customers and potential
Sure.
customers?
The first thing you want to do is, um, the first stage of any selling is to get someone to know, like, and trust you.
Yes.
So think about it. How do you establish trust? Well, one of the things that you do right away is you're totally focused on that person that you're selling to or talking to, or the company or whatever, right?
Right. Yes.
Like as if they're, and you treat everyone as the fact that they're the most important person in the world, because in their world they are,
Yes.
right?
That is true. That is true.
So, and when you acknowledge people, people long for acknowledgement and validation. They want to feel important. And so when you come in and you're fully saying to yourself, like when you get out of the car, before you go through the door or into the boardroom or wherever you're going, I am going to render impeccable service today, no matter what. It could be things, and what you can give to people is not just about your product. You can give people appreciation. You can give them acknowledgement. You can say something nice to someone, recognize what they say, even in situations when you're talking about, objections, any kind of objections. The very first rule is you always acknowledge what the other person said.
Right. So that they feel heard and that they understand that you've heard them and that you're willing
Exactly.
to help them.
Goes back to the act of listening, right? You have two ears and one mouth for a reason.
You sure do. You sure do. What else should you do? And I think this is so often overlooked, to follow up with a client after a sale.
I take copious notes, and I always like to send an email back to the client, just kind of summarizing, thank you for the time. So thank you, right? So they feel appreciated.
Right.
And summarizing kind of, what we talked about, the next action steps, and, some sort of a follow-up. And then, set yourself some follow-up program that you're going to have, whether it's going to be in your CRM or whatever. But if you take the discipline when you get done with the call to
Right.
write up the notes, write out the thank you note, and get it out, and you've got that electronically or however you keep your records, then, when you start the next call on the follow-up, the first thing I said is, has anything changed? Last time we met, da, 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 has anything changed since we last spoke? So why am I doing that? Because there could be a lot of things that changed.
Right.
You want to
Exactly.
get right to the heart of that before you just start assuming and going into, presenting or whatever stage of the cycle you're at. You want to make sure that if anything's changed.
I think that's a good point. And I hadn't really thought about that before, because I do have a lot of client meetings and I follow up from the last time, but I don't ask that question. And I think that I should. I should ask what's changed. Sometimes I ask for updates, but it's not the same as asking for the changes, because there are inevitable changes all the time in business. I am going to switch it up a little bit here. I have this fun game I like to play in my show. It's called If You Tell Me Yours, I'll Tell You Mine. So I'll ask you some quick questions. Are you ready?
Okay. I hope so.
If you could just magically have an extra hour every single day, what would you do with that?
I read, meditate more. I mean, I have that in my routine, but I take the extra hour to read something.
That's really great. I think I would use mine to either nap, because I feel like I could always use a little extra sleep, or I'd get my workout done in that extra window, like early, sometime in the morning, that I could use. I think that would work well for me.
Awesome.
Another question is, when you were 6 years old, what did you want to do when you grew up?
When I was 6, I did have a lemonade sale
Oh.
when I was 6, so maybe that was telling. I think I know what the answer to that is. I wanted to be a teacher.
Oh, very nice. So you are doing both of those things, you're selling and you're also teaching others. So it came true. I find the same for me. When I was young, I wanted to be an author, which I am. And I also wanted to be an actress. And although I'm not an actress, I do a lot of little things here and there. So I guess you can say, in a way, we kind of make it happen no matter what the route, right? It's a different version.
Yes. A lot of it comes back to your dharma,
Yes.
right? Your purpose.
I think you're absolutely right. Would you prefer to be slightly late to an event all the time or always be an hour early?
An hour early.
Yes. I agree with you there. There's nothing more stressful than being late to something. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh my gosh, yes, especially in selling.
Yes, you don't want to set that bad first impression at all. Okay,
Right.
last question. Are you a morning person or a night person?
Morning.
Yeah, it's
Early.
funny. I used to be also a night person, but I've transitioned and now I'm more of a morning person. I get the most done. Have you always
Right.
been a morning person?
Always,
Oh, good
always.
for you.
Yeah, because they tease me and like I'm usually always just sleeping at 10 o'clock. So, and I've done that for years. So I don't know. I guess my energy, I don't know, I just go more and I get a lot done, a lot of positive things done in the morning for me.
Good, good. That is an excellent trait to have. And my teenage daughters could sure use that switch because they are night owls right now. So we're coming to the end of our show here, Rhonda, and it's been a lot of fun. Where can the audience find out more about you?
So my website is www.3x5, like a 3x5 card, which is what I named my company at.
Oh, I was wondering about
Coaching.
that.
Goals on 3x5 cards. So, but anyway, 3x5coaching.com. And I also have a website that's associated with my book, which is www.thespiritofselling.com.
So everybody be sure to check out both of those places and to listen to Rhonda's wonderful advice about selling. Until next time, we'll see you again on Launch.